Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbart Gaming. Yes, as I'm sure you can hear, I'm pretty sick right now, but I'll power through that because I care. Anyway, today, I've got a short one for you. A review of the recently released, at least for the Nintendo Switch, Metroidvania-style game Astronite. There'd been some buzz around this one, and I'm a big fan of the genre, so I figured why not give Astronite a shot? I got a physical version in a buy one, get one free game sale on Amazon a few weeks ago, and this one was technically my freebie. First off, if you're looking at this and thinking, hey, you already covered this game.
Well, you're wrong!
You might be thinking of my coverage of Gato Roboto, which is a similar black and white Metroidvania title that also appeared on the system and other modern platforms. Astronite is available on a few platforms as I write this, but everything I'm going to talk about here is specific to my experience with the Nintendo Switch version of the game, which is the only version I've personally played. Before I begin, I will acknowledge that Astronite is primarily the work of one developer, Dominic Claret. I have enormous respect for any developer tackling a whole game by themselves. But even so, I'm going to give you my honest opinion on this, because this is a completed product that's being sold on store shelves. As such, it'll sit alongside many other games in the genre, both in real and virtual shops, and is competing for your same dollars. So having said that, let's get on with this. We'll begin with Astronite's visuals. They're intentionally simple, and while they're advertised as quote-unquote 1-bit, technically they aren't, since the game includes shades of gray in the background. Still, the characters and backgrounds look fine, there's some undeniable style in how everything is drawn and presented, and there's also a fair amount of variation to help make areas distinct and memorable. The animation is pretty good, and there are little ambient effects like snow, rain, little spiders crawling on walls, and things like that to make the world seem natural and lived in. More and more games are using this style now, so it doesn't quite have the novelty it did a few years ago when it started to become a little more prominent, but Astronite still looks pretty good. When it comes to audio, I've got to say it's very minimalist. There's just very little music in this game. Most of the time you'll be running around in either silence or with just some effects and ambient enemy sounds and things like that. You will hear music during a few specific moments like boss fights, an arena battle, or during some special gaming segments. The music that is here is pretty good. I really just found myself wishing that there was much more of it. Now I'll touch on the story for just a moment here. For this genre, usually I don't care much about the story, it's more about the gameplay for me. As long as the story doesn't get in the way, I'm good. Astronite has cutscenes that I'd say are a little too wordy for the basic story it tells, and that makes them kind of get in the way a bit. While nearly all of them are skippable, here's the problem. Some boss fights start with a cutscene, then have another one shortly after that, and then another one about halfway through. Now imagine having to do this boss fight 10 times, and you have to hit start to pause to skip the cutscene each time. And if you get in a second early, well then you gotta unpause, wait a second, and then pause to initiate skipping the cutscene. It all becomes a giant hassle when you've got to do it over and over again. The solution here would have been that you see the cutscenes one time, and then if you die, they just don't play again. And a side note here, in the English translation of the story for Astronite, there are quite a few typos and grammatical errors, which is never a good look for a finished game. Let's move on to gameplay. I have to begin this section by telling you that Astronite is a very short and simple game for the genre. You have a basic pea-shooter gun, you can jump, you can dash, and you can fire a jetpack for sort of a double jump. There's a hidden charge shot power-up, and well, as far as your weapons and actions go, that's literally it. For a Metroidvania-style game, Astronite feels more like a proof of concept than a completed product. You can collect multiple power-ups to increase the effectiveness of your actions, except for the charge shot, and finding those power-ups is the bulk of what you'll get as rewards for exploration. There are also a few health expansions hidden throughout the game, and some items you can buy in a shop to do things like see an energy bar for enemy health, enemy names, a map, and more. But overall, it just feels too simple and like there should have been more you could do, more power-ups that enabled more actions. But speaking of the map, it's kind of tiny compared to other games in the same genre. I completed Astronite with 100%, and my first time through, my in-game time was about 100 minutes, even though in real time it was probably more like 5 hours altogether. There's also very little in the way of extras, but the extras that are here are at least kind of fun. And I've got to say that even after completing this with 100%, it just felt like there should have been a little more to it, and that there should have been more interesting things to do and see than there actually were. Now the play mechanics, they're a little bit frustrating to be honest. Some parts of this game are just needlessly difficult. Overly difficult in my opinion. You'll die in Astronite. Most likely, a lot. And the game uses the Dark Souls / Hollow Knight shade mechanic, where when you die, you leave behind the equivalent of a shade in the spot where you were last killed. If you want your money back, you have to collect the shade. If you die again before you manage to collect the shade, then you lose all the money you've collected. And can I just say once and for all that I loathe this mechanic and wish that no game in the future would ever use it? All it does is waste your time by making you have to re-grind for money you lost, and is way too severe a punishment for exploration in a game that is primarily about exploration. And some of the stuff in the shop is really expensive, at least up until you get towards the end of the game, and I really can't stress enough just how annoying it is to collect money for a couple of hours and then just lose it all because of some freak thing that happens inside one of the areas. Now, most enemies have very random movement, and you might be stuck in a room waiting for flying enemies to move into a range where you can actually reach them with your weapon. Aside from that, there are environmental hazards in lots of areas like limited oxygen, bottomless pits, spikes on any kind of surface, moving ceilings that can crush you, and more. And all that's fine. The problem is, though, that you're often hit by a spike or an enemy and take damage right before you succumb to an environmental hazard, meaning you just took 2 hits instead of 1, which can often lead to a death since you have very limited health in this game. And also, you get barely any invincibility once you take a hit, so it's easy to get hit over and over in quick succession and die just from normal enemies. And again, I feel like all of this really discourages exploration, which is supposed to be the whole point of games in this genre. Making matters even worse, your hitbox is basically a square because of the shape of your character, and I was often hit by projectiles that look like they didn't make any contact at all. There are a decent amount of boss fights in Astronite, and most of them have kind of the same problem as regular enemies. Completely random movement and random attacks can mean you're kinda screwed if they just keep doing their one hard-to-dodge action over and over again. I've literally had moments where a boss did their most difficult to avoid attack 9 times in a row. The end result is that you'll end up doing some of these boss fights just over and over until you get a favorable set of enemy attacks, or you just get really good at dodging the tough ones because of constant repetition. As far as the extras go, there are a few retro gaming based challenges, a frankly disappointing information room that you have to find a hidden key to enter, there are some chests with money, and the aforementioned charge shot is hidden. That's pretty much it. Now, the problems with Astronite in the end are that it's just too short and too simple a game. It's frustratingly difficult in points, and frankly, it's more often aggravating than fun. Astronite's not bad, but it is just average, and in the pantheon of Metroidvania-style games on modern platforms, there's a lot that are just frankly better. Now, I've played a few that are worse, but there's a lot that are better. And I think most genre fans will feel let down by Astronite in the end. And really, I can only in good conscience give it a 5 out of 10 with the issues that it has. The going price for Astronite right now is between about $16 and $20. So it's not too big a risk if you're interested and you want to check it out for yourself. If you're a really huge fan of the genre, you'll find something to like here probably, even though I do think that most people will still wish it was a little more substantial in the end. Now again, I know this was primarily designed and programmed by one person, and I don't want to pick on them or seem like I'm being mean or anything, but I do also have to be honest about my opinion on this game. And I hope if he decides to go on to do a sequel or a follow-up of some kind, that he makes the world of the next game a little more expansive, adds a few more unique items, especially some related to locomotion that do something cool, and that makes the game maybe a little less frustrating by adding checkpoints in difficult rooms, or having more save points. And also, he should lose the whole shade concept. That just isn't fun, and I know some of you may argue with me on that one, but that's how I feel about it. Finally, I'd also emphasize the music more, and have music playing in every area, even if it's just subtle ambient music. I find that long stretches of silence just dull the whole experience. Anyway, I wish him the best of luck in the future, and I do see plenty of potential here. So now it's your turn. Have any of you played Astronite yet? What did you think of the game? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was just okay? Tell me all about it in the comments. And that'll do it for this video, my current and retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed the video, please like and share it online somewhere. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my videos. You can support the work I do on this channel through Patreon, Ko-fi, or now through channel memberships. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.